Hello, my name is Mark Thorburn, and I'm going to take you on a journey through the first 100 years of the Leamington and Warwick Musical Society. On the 7th of May 2021, the Leamington and Warwick Musical Society celebrated its first 100 years, a considerable achievement when so many similar societies nationwide have folded before this significant milestone. The Royal Leamington Spa Courier and Warwickshire Herald, dated the 29th of April 1921, carried this announcement: Proposed Amateur Operatic Society. For many years past, very successful amateur operatic societies have been in existence in a number of our cities and towns, and it is a laudable ambition that Leamington should endeavour to establish a similar society. An advertisement in another column announces that a meeting will be held next week to discuss the subject. And that notice stated that a meeting will be held at 6 p.m. on Saturday, the 7th Proximo, in the Spencer Street Schoolroom, Leamington, to discuss the possibilities of commencing an operatic society in the town. Mr. C. Watson Mill and Mr. F.J.A. Eccles have promised to assist, and it is hoped that all those who are interested, vocal, instrumental, and otherwise, will attend. On the 7th of May 1921, the meeting was held with Mr. Charles Watson Mill, the proprietor of the Theatre Royal in Regent Grove, acting as chairman for the meeting, and the society was created. Mr. Eccles was the first musical director. We believe that there was at least one such society prior to 1921, since in the Society's Golden Jubilee year in 1971, founder member Iris Lees wrote, "I've been asked to look back because I'm one of the few remaining members who took part in the performance of the Mikado in 1922. My father, William Spicer, and my mother, who was then Emily Gibbs, belonged to an earlier society which performed the Pirates of Penzance at the Theatre Royal in Regent Grove. My father sang in the chorus and my mother played the part of Ruth. This was, I believe, in 1893. In 1921, my father and many other enthusiasts called a meeting of music lovers with the result that the present society was born. Over those first 100 years, the society has presented 96 full stage productions plus innumerable concerts. Now, the Leamington and Warwick Operatic Society was very lucky that since 1881, Leamington had its own 1,200-seat Theatre Royal in Regent Grove. Charles John Phipps was the foremost theatre architect of his day. In 1868, he designed the Gaiety Theatre in London, which was become renowned as the home of Edwardian musical comedy. In 1881, Richard D'Oyley Carte commissioned him to design the Savoy Theatre, specifically for the works of Gilbert and Sullivan, which was a state-of-the-art facility and the first public building in the world lit entirely by electric light. Other Phipps theatres still in existence include the West End's Vaudeville Theatre, the Lyric on Shaftesbury Avenue, and the Garrick Theatre, which was actually built for W.S. Gilbert. When he died in 1897, at the relatively early age of 62, he had completed Her Majesty's Theatre just 3 weeks previously. It's currently the home of Phantom of the Opera. Leamington was indeed fortunate to have such a splendid theatre building available to the society. Mr. Charles Watson Mill, owner since 1910, was so enthusiastic about the Leamington and Warwick Operatic Society that from 1925, the society programme proclaimed that, by courtesy of Mr. C. Watson Mill, the Theatre Royal has been reserved during the first week in December for the productions of the Leamington and Warwick Operatic Society. This information should be useful to our supporters and also to other musical societies to avoid clashing of dates. Therefore, kindly note the first Monday in December begins Operatic Week. And this continued until December 1932, when, for reasons unknown, the society had to postpone their revival of the Mikado to March 1933. However, in 1921, their unanimous decision was to make their debut with the hugely popular Gilbert and Sullivan opera, The Mikado, which was presented in January 1922 under the very experienced direction of Mr. W.G. Orton. We know that Mr. Orton travelled from his home in Leicester to produce the society, while at the same time being coach to the Coventry Amateur Operatic Society. It'd be interesting to know how difficult the commute between Leicester and Coventry and Leamington was back in 1920s, presumably by train each day, or maybe he lodged with society members. However he did it, Bill Orton did it for a fair few years, it appears. The Mikado was a considerable success, but by the end of the week, the balance sheet was showing a loss. Fundraising made up the shortfall, but the second production in December of 1922 saw the Gondoliers play to 4,674 patrons, and 99 years later, it remains in the top 10 audience figures of the society. As with so many operatic societies throughout the country, Gilbert and Sullivan operas accounted for half of the annual productions in the early years, including one anomaly. We've been unable to find a published reason why, but in 1928, The Yeoman of the Guard was presented at the County Theatre in Nicholas Church Street in Warwick, although 1929, the society was back at the Theatre Royal in Leamington. However, the other half of those early productions were highly praised operettas and musical comedies, such as Tom Jones, Florodora, where, we're told, the scenery had to be held up for 5 encores of the hugely popular hit number, Tell Me Pretty Maiden, Are There Any More at Home Like You? A Country Girl, The Lavish Duchess of Danzig, the hugely popular Miss Hook of Holland, and then The Geisha. The 1930 production of The Vagabond King was only 3 years after its extensive run in the West End, something of a coup for the society riding high on the crest of a wave. The Merry Widow took 50 years to be released to amateur companies. But with the Wall Street crash of 1929 and the Great Depression which followed, times were hard for Mr. Watson Mill and his beloved Theatre Royal. In February 1933, he wrote a piece in the Leamington and Warwick programme urging people to support that most important factor in the life of the nation, the theatre. He'd owned and run the Theatre Royal since 1910, but 4 months after the Operatic Society's production of The Mikado, Mr. Watson Mill was dead, and the theatre was destined to become the Regent Cinema. Unfortunately, those who purchased the theatre building sold the stage area to the Regent Garage, situated immediately behind the theatre building. The 1934 Gondoliers was to be the last production on the stage of the Theatre Royal before it disappeared forever, leaving the towns of both Leamington and Warwick with nowhere suitable to perform large-scale musical productions. Had the town council had the foresight to purchase that stage area, then the cinema could still have functioned as a theatre when required. With the backstage area gone, no theatre was possible ever again. Cinema was followed by bingo. The building was finally demolished in 1984. A world war and 14 years were to pass before the Leamington and Warwick Operatic Society was able to perform again. In May 1909, an impressive new bandstand had been built on the banks of the River Lem in the Jefferson Gardens. On the higher bank facing it had been built a large covered area for townspeople to shelter under for the Sunday concerts in the gardens. By the late 1940s, the town council had covered the area between the two structures, thus creating the 936-seater Jefferson Gardens Pavilion, a vastly inadequate theatre, but a summer-only performance venue in which a society could produce a musical production. When in 1947, the bank manager suggested that the 14-year dormant account of the society be closed, there was a resounding no from the town. And in May 1948, Leamington and Warwick Musical Society was revived with HMS Pinafore. Somehow, despite its limitations, the pavilion had a charm of its own. Leading Lady in Call Me Madam in 1962 and Oklahoma in 1963, Cynthia Stew, is quoted as saying, "To walk through the Jefferson Gardens on a summer evening on the way to the pavilion had an air of Victorian romanticism." The building was made of glass, so in the summer it could be rather like a greenhouse, and when it rained, it sounded like dried peas on a tin roof, hardly conducive to listening to a musical performance at times. An interesting piece in a Society newsletter from 1968 seems appropriate for all shows in the pavilion. Adrian Wilkinson said, "The transformation which took place last week in turning a small, rather tatty stage into a large and very imposing Siamese palace was little short of miraculous. The work that John Darlow, Keith Wood and Steve Johnson do in building and equipping the stage virtually from scratch gets to be more impressive each year." A word too of the help from Midland Stage Decor, who provide us with specially designed made-to-measure scenery at very reasonable cost. The number of helpers, both from men in the cast and husbands and friends who give a hand in installing and removing scenery and equipment such as lighting and sound, was very gratifying. From 1962 to 1971, our producer in the pavilion was Edwin P. Grant, scenic artist at the Coventry Theatre for all of his working life. So it was his talent which led to the transformation of the building into a Siamese palace for the King and I, or a Tyrolean village for White Horse Inn. As you've already heard today, the Loft Theatre celebrates its own centenary in May 2022. From 1948, there was a close connection between the Loft and LWOS, as they provided stage staff for productions and even designed and built our set for the 1949 Pirates of Penzance. In 1958, of course, they suffered the first of their two fires. And it's interesting to note that the profits from our Silver Jubilee production of Rosemarie in the pavilion were donated to the Loft Restoration Fund. With the generosity of the town, they were able to return to their theatre just 14 months after that first fire. Whilst we do not possess the financial figures for all our productions, we can give a snapshot of rising costs of our shows. In 1922, the Mikado cost £300. By 1948, the entire production of HMS Pinafore cost £400. The Treasurer was aghast to report that by 1970, costs had risen to £1,876 for the week. An example of increasing costs was given in that in 1949, Leamington Town Council donated the use of the pavilion to the Society to help re-establish itself. The hire fee for 1971 was a mere £60. However, finally in 1972, Leamington built its long-promised Civic Hall, the Royal Spa Centre, and the hire fee immediately rose to £437 for the week. Imagine how the Golden Jubilee Treasurer would react to the information that our 2019 production of Andrew Lloyd Webber's Cats cost a staggering £45,152 to stage, but sellout audiences ensured a healthy profit. Amateur musical theatre is big business in the 21st century. One very welcome addition to our balance sheet was from the Royal Spa Centre manager, Peter Creswell, who soon after his arrival in 1978, invited the Society to present a second show for Christmas 1979, financed by Warwick District Council and the profits shared equally between the Council and the Society. The Sound of Music proved a massively popular Christmas treat for the towns and remained the production playing to the biggest audience numbers in our history, over 7,000 people. LWOS produced 8 Christmas musicals between 1979 and 1996, more than any other society who shared the special honour, and the Society coffers benefited from the biannual extra input. The transfer of productions from the pavilion to the Royal Spa Centre meant that it became more economic to hire scenery than to build it, as the shows produced became more modern and lavish in scale. 1973 saw Lionel Bart's 1960 masterpiece Oliver, but it was followed by Ivor Novello's last musical spectacular, King's Rhapsody from 1949, which was ideal for Leamington and Warwick's magnificent chorus and principal singers. My Fair Lady was followed by Showboat, then a second Oklahoma, before the often avoided Desert Song played to just 153 empty seats during its entire week. By the 1980s, we welcomed a new member who would go on to become a modern musical theatre giant. Dave Willits was cast as leading man Harold Hill in the 1983 Music Man, followed by Billy Bigelow in Carousel that Christmas. In 1985, he was the last man cast in the original Royal Shakespeare Company production of a new London musical entitled Les Miserables, and went on to be the first man in the world to play the leads in both Les Mis and Phantom of the Opera, among many other notable shows. Over a phenomenal 40-year career, he's performed all over the world, from Australia to Los Angeles, and has sung with the likes of Petula Clark, Tony Bennett, and Sammy Davis Jr. Earlier this month, he was back with LWMS, officially launching the centenary celebrations and toasting the Society's success over 100 years. In 1984, producer Edwin P. Grant stepped down after 23 hugely successful years and 26 productions. But this amazing legacy has been exceeded by one of his successors. Current director Stephen Duckham has directed 33 productions already, and he's currently working on next year's delayed centenary production. 2003 saw the modernising renaming of the Society. For 72 years, the Leamington and Warwick Operatic Society had reflected the old-fashioned heavy choral shows favoured in earlier years. With Jesus Christ Superstar in 2004, it was felt that becoming the Leamington and Warwick Musical Society, the title reflected the more modern productions that Society was now presenting. Crazy for You, Summer Holiday, The Full Monty, Barnum, Thoroughly Modern Millie, The Producers, Singing in the Rain, Legally Blonde, and Cats, mingled with older favourites like Oklahoma, produced 4 times by the Society and each time realising a profit. Annie, Fiddler on the Roof, and The King and I. Some big profits mingled with big losses on a few productions. Yet the Society has reached the momentous milestone of 100 years with a healthy bank account, a vibrant young society, and a determination to continue to move forward. In 2022, the Musical Society will celebrate 50 years of producing its annual shows at the Royal Spa Centre, having given the first performance in the Avon Hall when it presented Song of Norway in June 1972 to very big and enthusiastic audiences. It's hoped that the 5th to the 9th of April centenary production of Andrew Lloyd Webber and Tim Rice's worldwide phenomenon Evita will celebrate both the Society and the venue in appropriate style. The entire story of those first 100 years is told in a 112-page full-colour souvenir full of photographs, stories and memories from all 96 productions by the Society, peppered with anecdotes from the history of the towns of Leamington and Warwick. It tells how hundreds of local enthusiasts have tried their best to entertain local audiences close to home with some truly stupendous results. Read all about it in What We Did for Love, available from the Royal Pump Rooms, local bookshops, and our website, www.leamingtonandwarwickmusicalsociety.co.uk. Thank you.